It is the year 1968, and you are now in the middle of nowhere, caught up in a storm deep in jungles where it seems nobody has ventured before, if not for the war going on. A vicious storm develops as two lost soldiers are cut off from their platoon. The rain is so heavy that no sound can be heard. The squad leader tries to get help from the radio, yelling into the mic, and explains that mysteriously his men have just disappeared. Suddenly, an ear-piercing roar resonates in the trees. His partner gets dragged into darkness. Afraid, leader shoots around at random into bush, but he cannot hit anything. He runs for his life, panting and slipping over mud until bushes part. A huge prehistoric dinosaur lunges out of shadows, killing him instantly. The following morning at an American military camp, a Vietnamese woman approaches the soldiers frantically asking for help. She explains that her husband was taken by a feathered demon into the jungle. The soldiers do not take her seriously because they think that she is just psychologically disturbed as a result of the war. However, the military has problems of its own. Just then they had intercepted an unknown enemy truck with odd containers, and upon first inspection, the radiation readings are beyond dangerous. Level. One has to consider that this is not done for realism only. The soldier radios Colonel Jericho as distant bombs shake the ground. He gives the information about the radioactive truck and the squad that disappeared in night hours. Understanding that in front of him is no ordinary situation, Jericho clearly identifies his next interlocutor. He needs Vulture Squad, his elite specialists. They introduce us to the Vulture Squad in a scene where they are sneaking up in a heavily guarded enemy camp. They currently move like dark shadows who take down two guards from behind with brutal efficiency. Their snipers silently eliminate watchtower sentries from a distance. The squad clears the perimeter. Hell is unleashed. They rush the camp, gunning down any that dare cross their path, and because of the flawless cover fire from their snipers, they vanish every danger in minutes just covering area. They proceed to the detained prisoners' cages. Unhappily, they find their 3 fellow Americans dead, and yet they are able to save 2 survivors. An enemy soldier who suddenly jumps out from hiding to ambush them is quickly cut down by a Vulture sergeant with a machete. Extraction helicopters arrive, but not the Vulture Squad. They are informed that they have already been reassigned to another mission, a highly classified one. They choppers will drop you off at the FOB where Americans are bizarrely holding a live tiger in cage. Colonel Jericho gives a briefing to the team. He tells them of a squad that was lost during the storm and the weird, very unsettling rumors coming out of the valley. Theirs is purely reconnaissance. Find missing men and call in choppers for an extraction. When they ask him what they are walking into, simply says it is classified. When alone, Jericho have a side talk with Baker, the leader of the Vultures. Jericho makes a deal that nobody knows about it. If Baker keeps his men disciplined and working as expected, Jericho will wipe away some nasty accusations from Baker's permanent criminal record. In the meantime, the team is suffering the psychological pain of war. Yet another soldier, Keyes, approaches his friend Stovall regarding his PTSD, which is getting worse. Stovall is getting too loud, but he is not an artillery general. Too unpredictable, yet he is not a sniper. And in the jungle, noise gets you killed. Keyes makes Stovall promise to see a doctor once this is over. On that evening, the Vulture Squad's assigned to fly a chopper for their new mission. Halfway there, the alarm systems of the helicopter start wailing. The pilot fights with controls and screams that weapon systems are completely fried, yet miraculously chopper is still flying straight. Near the edge of the thick jungle, they land and immediately something impossible catches their attention. There is a game trail crushed into the trees, but it is massive, far bigger than anything an elephant could make. On their part of deployment, they find a note on 3 toe prints deep in the mud, which too far into the mud to fit any known animal. Farther along, they come across large, bright-colored feathers. Lastly, they notice a ripped backpack with a map marked Research Station 4, and notebook with its last page written on blood. We are being hunted. The area is covered with no casualties except 2 different tracks and traces. The squad decides to proceed along the track closely buried deep in the hot jungle. As they advance through the bush, they were startled by a peculiar clicking noise which reverberated from the bushes. Suddenly, something that is as fast as light gets out of the thicket, catches Baker's leg, and violently pulls him on his back across the dirt. To Baker, there is no cause for alarm. He only raises his gun and fires haphazardly until the unknown being lets him go and retreats. His team members come forward, bandage his bloody leg, and they continue moving ahead. These are not the only people wandering around in the jungle. A brutal team of Russian special forces, referred to as the Dogs of War, is also on their trail. They have taken prisoner a local woman called Conan to serve them as their tracker. The Russians see the Americans' bullet casings and make Conan follow them. As they go on, a soldier at the extreme end of their queue faintly hears something stirring. Before he could do anything, a dinosaur suddenly jumps out of the bushes and swallows him with its huge jaws. When the rest of the Russians see their comrade's mutilated, half-eaten body, They think it was done by Americans. When they reunited with the vultures, the men are nervous. Discovering a huge, razor-sharpened claw on the ground leads them to the thought of heading back and ignore whatever it is they have seen. But Baker finds the shredded piece of an American uniform. He doesn't want to leave his brothers. They go into a black, dark cave, which was only filled by echoes. Inside, they encounter the missing American squad, or what remains of it. The bodies have been violently torn apart by an apex predator. A noise in the shadows makes the squad freeze, a launching pad for an instant when all goes silent before chaos is unleashed. Out of the blue, a small horde of razor-sharp, feathered raptors strikes from dark areas. The soldiers seek protection behind any shelter they can find, thrusted their automatic weapons up into the swarm of scales and teeth blindly. Terror crept inside the cave. The muzzle flashes seem to reveal the horrible faces of the monsters as the vultures take down one dinosaur after another with their guns. In the bedlam, Baker and Vern, his colleague, are directed to a side passage so narrow that they are cut off at once from the team. They run as fast as they can through the dark tunnels until they reach an opening where sunlight is pouring in from above. Listening to more creatures coming closer, they climb desperately up a wall built of thick vines. A dinosaur reaches, snapping its jaws inches from Baker's boots when Baker aims his rifle downward, killing it instantly. The noise calls for a gang of the creatures, but they cannot jump high enough and get hold of the men. Until they break on the highest level of the cave system, Baker and Vern climb back and forth. The other vultures also manage to free themselves from the cave by causing a loud noise. They were alarmed by movement in the bush and raised their weapons, supposing that more small predators were following them. As a result, they are caught in a complete sudden. A huge, immense beast walks heavily past them, and they stand still, freeze with every step that he makes shaking the ground. While Baker and Vern were having their own exploration of the aesthetic appeal of a clearing, they run into the most dreadful thing, a dinosaur that is very huge and looks like the T-Rex is taking a nap, closely surrounded with all kinds of human and animal skeletons graveyard, adding salt to injury. Here are 3 baby dinosaurs who suddenly appear behind their massive parent to carry on screeching at the humans. The noise wakes up the sleeping giant. Baker and Vern run for their lives. They sprint through the trees, blindly firing their rifles backward just to slow down the monster. They dive into a dense thicket bush, holding their breath. Nevertheless, due to Predator's keen senses, it heads right where they are. The Russian survivor. The next morning finds the rest of the vultures on the other side of the river and in need of a long break. They nearly kill themselves out of fear for Baker and Vern, but that does not mean they are going to go back into that cave. Bizarre sounds make them walk constantly. By this time, in other parts of the forest, Baker and Vern still remain to be powered by nothing other than adrenaline. The giant dinosaur is still after them, with undying determination. They seek cover behind a fallen tree and Baker lobs a frag grenade. The explosion momentarily distracts the beast for the 2 men to sprint to the edge of a precipice. Having no further place to turn, they fall. They fall into the deep river underneath, and just behind them, the heavy dinosaur crashes down from off of the cliff. Baker breaks the surface of the water, gasping for breath, only to realize that Vern was hit unconscious by the fall. With the huge dinosaur gone swimming, Baker pulls Vern towards muddy shore. Suddenly, a woman emerges out of jungle. Her name is Sophia. She helps Baker to drag Vern to safe place and wake him up. She informs them wryly that most likely their entire team is dead, and then shows them her hidden sanctuary system. Those 2 groups that have been separated walk through the jungle and see things which are not possible. There are dinosaurs of all kinds, colors, and sizes who wander through the landscape. They attempt to evade the dangerous meat-eaters by stealth, whereas Key's group in fact find themselves at one point walking calmly next to huge, gentle herbivores. Led by Sophia, Baker and Vern come to Research Station 4, the very area described in the bloody notebook. She tells that she had been staying here with no one else for over a year, since all her team of scientists were terminated. The building is built from steel-reinforced concrete, making it probably the only safe place in the valley. When they get inside, Sophia locks the heavy doors at once, then injects herself with a strange medicine into her arm. The soldiers point their weapons up and start asking questions. While Vern is tinkering with a broken radio, Sophia unexpectedly reveals that they are in a valley of a commander in Russia who was out of order and killed everyone who corrected him. General Borodin falsely built an enormous particle collider here. When things went wrong, he slaughtered everyone who knew about it. She is the only one left alive. Vern is able to repair the radio in the end. Baker takes the mic and radios Colonel Jericho. In his talk, he mentions about the Russian collider, Sophia, and dinosaurs, as well as asks for immediate extraction of him men. If Jericho leaves them behind, Baker will tell the media. Jericho does not believe in stories about dinosaurs, but still he checks through intelligence. Borodin. When Soldier brings Fang of giant dinosaur recovered earlier to Jericho, He finally gets it. Fields surround the rest of the vultures, only to be suddenly pinned down by deadly machine gun fire. They have been discovered by the Russian dogs of war. Keyes receives a bullet in his leg and falls down. Hearing an intense fight, Baker, Vern, and Sophia rush to the direction of the gunfire sound. There are two military teams who are confronting each other at the moment. But that racket catches the attention of something far worse. Predators with great wings drop down from the sky. The soldiers of both sides stop shooting at each other temporarily and shoot upwards instead. One of the flying monsters lands directly in front of a Russian soldier, using its sharp beak to open him up. When the rest of the flyers gather around their meal, the soldiers take advantage of it and flee away. The vultures yank the bleeding Keyes into the jungle while Connon's captive lets her colleagues regroup with him, and they continue their advance. Now that Keyes is safe, the vultures wrap his leg. Baker's group is back with them at last, but the vultures point their guns to Sophia. They do not trust her because she is Russian. No sooner have they come alive than the jungle comes alive. A pack of small, hyper-intelligent raptors surrounds them, running in dizzyingly circles and climbing the trees to attack from above. Soldiers let off a barrage of gunfire, killing all the beasts in their way. Yet they cannot catch the dinosaurs. One of them comes up behind the injured Keyes and then takes him away quite forcibly into the bushes. Keyes is dropped at the base of a tree surrounded by hissing predators. He picks up a stout branch and swings it around maniacally as if fighting an invisible enemy. A raptor leaps from above, but Keyes manages to throw it off. As he gets ready for his last battle, the small dinosaurs all of a sudden bolt in fear. The fact that it did not scare him until a humongous, terrifying predator appeared suddenly and left Keyes there thinking he has won. A blow to Keyes sends him to the ground, and the thing comes after him further to step on his chest and shake him severely, thus breaking his bones. Hearing his team screaming out his name at far distance, Keyes takes out his combat knife and buries it deep into Monster's neck. It roars from pain just as vultures appear, shooting their weapons, scaring the beast away. Sophia coldly suggests leaving critically injured Keyes behind, but Baker firmly refuses. The siege of Station 4. Watching the night falls, the team forced to lay over for the night in Sophia's concrete building. Keyes is laid on a metal table and packs full of painkillers in his body. Baker catches Sophia sneaking away and follows her, eventually realizing that she is taking a jab again. She confesses that she is an addict who uses the medicine to cope with her nightmare. Sophia finally tells the story as it was. Her husband was a nuclear scientist and she, a paleontologist. The Russian military sent them to this place to build a collider that would create a teleportation wormhole for an invasion of the US. But General Borodin took shortcuts. The machine backfired, crossed time, and created a hole in time to the prehistoric past. Dinosaurs flooded into our world. Borodin left the trampled lab and presently is constructing a second, more powerful collider deep in the mountains. Conversation is finished. Through the window, you see the dinosaur passing by. They still don't shoot in order to be not noticed, but this beast got them through the glass. They have to put a bullet in its head. The gunshots reverberate across the valley, signaling every predator of the region that dinner was ready. The buzzards moved to the window and let off their guns non-stop in the blackness of the creatures swarming around them. And out there, something massive begins pounding on the reinforced steel door. Along with their concentration on its windows, finally, a dinosaur breaks through a barricade. It is pure close-quarter chaos. The soldiers physically push back the beasts and force themselves to relock the door. However, the creatures are intelligent. One climbs on the glass skylight and uses its thick skull to smash through the ceiling. The soldiers are put in an even worse position than before. Sophia points to a secret back door that leads to the river docks, but Keyes knows his broken body will only slow them down. He orders his team to leave him. Stovall heartbrokenly lights one final cigarette for his best friend before running for the exit. With the dinosaurs coming into the room, Keyes smiles, pulls the pins of 2 fragmentation grenades, and takes the monsters down to hell with him. The vultures left on a boat in the middle of a river observe the explosion, lament their fallen brethren as they steer into pitch blackness. Simply, the following day, the boat sails at a leisurely pace upstream. Baker explains that they are going to take out Borodin's new collider and demolish it to bits. Sophia tries to dissuade them, but she soon faints from acute drug withdrawal symptoms. Upon waking up, she gives a chilling piece of information. By setting off the unstable collider, they could open a black hole which would obliterate the entire planet. It must not be blown up. Instead, they need to find the way how to pull its plug manually. While the soldiers raptly observe the dinosaurs drinking from the river, Sophia goes on and tries to help herself with another syringe. The men struggle it off her and it drops down, but a swimmer dinosaur snaps it up. Baker scolds Sophia aggressively to let her have cigarettes in order to calm her down. Stovall, 100% broken by losing keys, is staring blankly at water. He raised his gun to self-delete, but Baker grabbed the weapon, explaining that team need him for surviving. When it seems like the boat has been sailing for generations, it suddenly enters a fog huge enough to jump scare you. They disembark and find themselves staring at a bloodbath. Tens of human bodies decorate the beachfront, just when they thought they had seen it all. In one fast move, a gang of impressive dinosaurs strikes them deep in the misty forest. This is a merciless, frantic battle for life with firearms, combat blades, and bare fist systems as the only weapons. The dismemberment of his friends by the beast is what makes Stovall give in to zero desperation. He goes totally insane, screaming louder than ever before he shoots in all directions without an aim, yet luring the whole pack's attention towards him. He jumps into the river, laughing like a maniac as he hears Key's voice echoing in his shattered mind. Standing knee-deep in water, completely surrounded by monsters, Stovall fires his very last bullet into self-termination. The dinosaurs come down on his body. By the time of night, the remainder of the team comes to the big Russian base that is well protected. Baker radios Colonel Jericho with the coordinates. Jericho tells them in no uncertain terms not to attack the installation, referring to it as a matter of national security. Baker makes nothing out of it as he pretends radio static is in order to engage and demands rescue choppers before turning off radio. The vultures commence their last attack. They penetrate the perimeter, quietly breaking necks and slitting the throats of the Russian guards. Baker and Sophia move stealthily towards the main control center. There, they learn that the Russian dogs of war are being held. Their captive guide, Conan, is angry at General Borodin for destroying her homeland with dinosaurs. The Russian mercs are as much furious as Borodin for abandoning them to die. Baker released them, and they agree on a temporal truce to stop the mad general. Contrary, a Russian guard who has no idea about what is going on spots a little dinosaur kid wandering next to the military base camp and shoots it dead. At the same time, General Borodin is yelling at the guard, but there is no sense in his actions. The deafening roar shakes the earth. The baby's massive parents come out of jungle, utterly blind with anger. These monstrous creatures completely destroy the base. They squash armored vehicles under their feet and tip guard towers over with their tails, biting soldiers in half, spitting bodies up into the air like toys. Nothing but sheer terror is felt as the Russian army turns and runs. In one of the kaiju-scaled levels of destruction, in the middle of it all, Conan spots a vulture that he recognizes as Miller. He was part of the unit that had been responsible for killing her family several years prior. She charges at him, and what you can term as a fierce and personal fight ensues with dinosaurs stumping all around them. They get back to being under a truck so that they avoid being crushed. Finally, Miller pushes her off and tries to run, but Conan leaps on his back before stabbing him repeatedly. With time, Miller starts bleeding and requests for her forgiveness, pleading for his past sins. Realizing they're surrounded by monsters, Miller lights up his explosives and explodes them, killing himself, Conan, and scaring away massive beasts. The laboratory was gone into by Baker and Sophia, while at the same time are shooting a scientist who tries to sound the alarm. Sophia rushes to the control console to shut off the collider that is out of control. General Borodin steps out of the shadows and points his pistol on her head. Before he can pull the trigger, Baker shoots him in the chest. Borodin falls down to the floor bleeding. Sophia spat on the man who has destroyed her life, deciding to let him suffer more than killing him off quickly. She cut expertly the main power cable system. The lights flicker, machines power down, and portal is getting closed. When the backup generators come online, Borodin does not wait. Out of nowhere, a pack of dinosaurs invade the base just in time for a meal from hundreds of dead soldiers. The monsters fill up the exit tunnel. The vultures throw smoke and fire, but to no avail eventually. The creatures broke into the lab, destroying all its delicate equipment. One of the Russian dogs of war dies instantly. Borodin, who is trying to crawl away, is seized and devoured by the swarm. The surviving banditos deploy C4 plastic explosives and run for another way out. One of the vultures knows he won't be able to get out in time, but he decides to stay behind. He uses his minigun to cover the retreat and dies in the explosion himself. The rest of the party follows Sophia towards a large escape ladder that leads upwardly. Dinosaurs are following at their heels. One of the vultures is screamingly dragged into the shadows. Baker knows that there must be a guide to keep others safe. He tells Sophia and the rest of the men to get up the ladder while he goes back to iron out things with the horde. Baker runs down the corridor, flinging grenades over his shoulder, but beasts come on too fast. They overpower him, and the courageous squad leader is killed. The few soldiers who were lucky to be alive and used the underground base as a means of escape stop there only when dinosaurs follow them. They are not the only ones, however. Colonel Jericho is already here with a fleet of attack helicopters. The choppers unleash a storm of heavy machine gun fire and rockets, obliterating the dinosaurs on the ground and blowing the flying predators out of the sky. The survivors scramble aboard the choppers just as the C-4 charges detonate, completely vaporizing the Russian base and the collider. As they fly away into the sunrise, Jericho angrily scolds the team for destroying the time machine instead of stealing the technology for the US government. Sophia looks out the window at the ruined landscape and delivers a chilling final warning. It doesn't matter that the machine is gone. It was running for too long. Dinosaurs have already migrated out of the jungle, and soon the entire world will realize that humanity is no longer at the top of the food chain.